How's it going, lads? I am not a base builder. I am more a PvP, and I do a lot of electronics, programming for bases, that kind of stuff. I don't really like base building, but after I found and I created the three tier, I call it the crown. I've gotten a lot more interested in base building because it is so easy. And especially for solo, for upkeeps for something like this, let me just explain it. So these are external TCs, and you're looking at, for the basic external, you're looking at around, I'd say, a node and a half, and then one recycle a day, 24 hours on this. And then for something like this, where you have your jump up into your actual base, you're looking at around, I think it's 36, let's say 3,500 stone. So each one of these externals, if you want to go the basic route, you're looking at minimum stone, like 4 stones each per, and then whatever your initial base costs are going to be. So I predict once this 3 story is done with the roof, you're looking at probably, I'd say 3 to 4, I'd say 3 to 5,000 stone. So this is, in my opinion, this is one of the best starter bases for solos. I really do, because, and this is the most important part about everything, is you can build on the fly. You're not committed to any footprint, so you're not getting caught when you're actually building, and it's very minimal to actually get started. So let's actually start with how you create one of these externals. So let's start with the actual what you would do in a fresh spawn. So how you want to think of it is you want to put down a triangle, and wherever that triangle is facing is where you're actually going to be building your base to around, I would say, around to there. So once you put that down, you're basically going to dedicate yourself to building your base around there. So once you put your initial one, you just want to put your TC in this square over here. And then there's a couple of variations of this that I want to show you, but let's do just the minimum, most secure one that we actually can right now. So what you would do is you would pop in, let's say you wanted to play for a week, you put in your stone in order to actually upkeep for about a week. And that would roughly be, what was that? I'd say 400 stone every 24 hours. And then a little bit of metal frags if you wanted to put down your barricades. So you wall that in. Don't mind the actual soft side. I'm not going to really care about that. And then you're going to build, you're going to build a half wall here. And I'll show you the actual footprint for building externals. So the reason why you have to put 2 half walls there is you actually need the stability to be lost for when you put a roof to actually break your bunker. So currently right now, what you can do is you could just put a door, and then you could kind of just live out of this for a little while. Put your bag there, put your bag outside, put something there, a box there. But let's actually just go over the external. So how this works is you don't have to leave this foundation here. I remove it just because of the cost. It's a little less of a cost. So you're going to do 1 foundation. We're just going to do the foundations for now. You're going to do a half semicircle, and then you're just going to build out 3 square foundations. And then you're going to do 2 triangle foundations. So everything past here is going to be your base. So just keep that in mind. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove all the triangles in the external, and this is essentially it. What you're going to do from here is you can make this a wall, you can really do whatever you want there, but to attach, you just do the exact same as the foundations. So you're going to do your semicircle, your squares, semicircle, and then there you go. So this is a fully set up external on this over here. So we can't actually put our TC down, but when we go to disconnect, and the only thing that you need to do to disconnect is just attach a roof, it disconnects that, we can actually put down our TC here. So, and then just remove your roof. Again, I like to remove the foundation in order to keep the upkeep lower. And then you just attach that, and there you go. So you have your external. So to go back to my original point over here. So just remove the, why can't I, what's going on here? Okay, so to do this the best way, or the most secure way, is actually just to completely wall in your TC. And this is going to be a, what is that, an 8 rocket raid as of these. So that's still relatively cheap, but the question that you kind of want to ask yourself is, you know, if they're going to be raiding that, and let's actually see the upkeep once we connect. Come on, work with me here, man. Let me show you the upkeep on this. So that's around 1,000 stone just for this basic external per 24 hours. So this is the most secure one, and realistically, this is fine. There's nothing wrong with this one if you just want to get quick and dirty. But the reason why I'm going to suggest this other way is because I find that you kind of want to live in it for a little while, and this is kind of one of the pros of this kind of base. So let's pretend that we're building here. How I like to actually do this is PC goes here. Is I expect to stay in this for at least a couple of hours for me to get all the resources that I need to actually build my main base. So how I like to do this is I like to farm probably 3 or 4 days worth of resources into this, because at that time, if you really needed to break into your TC again, yeah, you'd have enough resources in 5 days. If you didn't, you're doing something wrong. Go back to wherever it is that you need to go aim train or something like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up your half walls, and you want them to face out because, again, I like to live in this for a little while. Let me actually just turn no clip off. I like to live in this for a little tiny while, so I like turning these into actually like root bunkers. Loot bunkers. So you want to switch both of your walls to the outside, and in order to place a box in here, kind of just want it to clip about the same on both sides. And then you know if you've done it right is if you can't jump out of here, and I'll show you what this looks like with the garage door. And you want it faced out. So you fit a large box in there. Again, it doesn't have to be a large box. It can be a small box. Like this. So the next stage after this one, of course, I need like a ladder or something like that. So let's pretend the box is down. Oh my, you're gonna have to put the box. Okay, so let's do this again. So let's just pretend that that's perfect. So crouch, and then we're going to jump. Oh my god. And then we're going to build that, and then we're going to put our second box here. Realistically, you can really put whatever you want here. Doesn't really matter. The thing is that you're going to be turning that into a loot room, so why not, right? So there you go. There's kind of, you can live in this, and the upkeep for something like this is going to be just basic. I'd say like 400. Okay, yeah, 400 stone, give or take, and then 30 metal frames for your garage door. So you can live in this for a little while. No one's really going to raid it, especially if you put keylocks on that, something like that. And this can, and then remember to switch these once you place your boxes. So once you actually created this, then you can build out and then build your main base as is. So in order to make this a little bit more secure, though, is you're going to want to put your actual secondary stuff. So it's like if you want to put your furnace here, and then so forth. your bag in here or something, whatever, right? So this in itself is it's not unraidable, but in getting up quickly, you smack one node and you're good to go, right? Like you don't have to have garage doors on this. You can have sheet metal to start out with, everything like that. So this is kind of my preferred, and then of course, I'll reinforce the actual the sides here, right? So I would build those up. So this is kind of like a starter base, and then whenever you're ready, you would build out your main base. So that would be one foundation. You do your semicircle. Come on, do your semicircle, and then from here you just build your 3 foundations, and then 2 triangles, and then your actual main base is here. So again, you'd have to remove that so it's not connected, and then you'd remove these triangles and set up the actual connection. So this is kind of the way that I like to do it, because you're not committed to any kind of layout. From here, you can build anything that you want. You don't have to worry about getting rated right away. You could build out. You could do a 6x6 if you truly wanted to, right? Like this, and there's no problems. You don't have to worry about losing all your stuff. But if you're building a 6x6 in the beginning of Wipe, you're on a clan, and maybe this might work for you, maybe it might not. So those are the 2 that I like to do, and then again from here, what I like to do is just take this and actually turn it into a loop. Now, here's another thing that I actually want to show off. I've talked about this in another video, but let's say, for instance, if you wanted to be able to know when someone is actually rating you. The thing with the seismic sensor is they don't they don't tell you technically when you're being rated. They tell you when people are shooting rockets or any explosions go off in your base. So I could throw a satchel on, or I could throw a grenade on your base, and if you have the default settings, it could just basically go off, and then it could be basically a false alarm from there. So let's pretend, for instance, that we are building our external here. So what you're going to want to do for this is for each one, let's actually even just start with the foundation here. For each one of the places that you want to detect if they've been broken or not, you're going to want to set up a branch. So you're going to need one power supply in order to run power through your system. So let's use just a small battery for this. So what this is doing is basically acting as just a way to funnel power into each of these electrical branches in order to stop the true condition on a blocker going off. So I'll explain that. So you're going to want to put that in your blocker pass-through. So that's going to be blocking everything. And then you're going to need an external power supply. So let's pretend that this is our actual main base power. And you're going to want to feed that through the actual power in. So as you can see, because each of these walls, the foundation, let's say you wanted a roof as well, all of these hooked up are actually blocking the power for the conditional there. But if we were to remove the power, you see how it's actually being passed through now. So in actuality, what happens is if someone removes one of these walls, you can be able to tell. So the seismic sensor is great for any kind of alarms to, like realistically how I would do it is I would set up a seismic sensor to tell your Rust Smart Plus when there's 2 rockets that have gone off in a row in a certain amount of time, and then you're essentially being rated. But if you wanted to know when one of your walls have been destroyed or your foundation or anything, this is another way to actually do this. So how I actually use this in conjunction with this over here is I would put down a conveyor, not here. I'd probably put it on this one. But as soon as one of these walls or foundations have been removed, or even the door, then I would actually start funneling loot from this loot room into my main base, and then from there it would probably funnel into one of my other externals. So the raider, if they're dedicated to getting any loot, because you will technically, like, you will see. Just give me 2 seconds. Let me get a crafter. So people will see in my examples, they will see these pipes, going from each of my TCs. But you could also just think there and just be like, okay, well, he set up a window, and each of his TCs are just being funneled loot when needed, right? So this is kind of usually, and then of course, I'll have my electronics in here as well, like my conveyors and everything. So this is kind of what people would see when they see these externals here. But yeah, this is how I basically progress in terms of starting small and then moving up. And then realistically, this is kind of my perfect setup, where I have my one loot room that's walled in. I have my boxes here. I have my TC in here. That's connected. And then I put shotgun traps behind here so that when people jump up here, and then I have one of those the hoppers here to take their loot, and then I have another shotgun trap here, and then another shotgun trap here. And then I put a turret down here in order to actually just protect the compound. But you'd also be putting, I like to put a hopper right here, but you'd also be putting your barricades around the corners like this in the event that someone does get over this. They're like, there's really nothing down there. Now, one last thing. Now, I was actually just going to leave it on there, but I actually just want to show one last thing. I'm giving too many of my secrets away right now. So how I actually set up this in order to, you're going to like this one. So what you want to do is you want to set up a shotgun trap on your roof. How you do that is you line up the arrow to the tip of your wall there, and then you put two triangle roofs, and then I'm just going to D off on this. Check this out. So someone gets up here, they get up here, they blast the door for whatever reason, they're ready to go. Boom. So, and then of course up here, I usually put my other peak downs. What are you doing? Oh yeah, I'm not authorized. Please tell me I'm authorized. Come on, what's going on here? And then I put my other foundations, my roof on this side. And of course, come on, man, waste of time here. Okay, come on. What? Okay. So what I'll do over here is I will put up my other roof facing the other way so that I can have peaks. So it's much harder for them to actually get in. And then I'll put, a hatch over here or something like that. But realistically, at the end of the day, you want to have 6 externals branch out of there. So each one of these, that one node every 24 hours, and let's say, let me see, 5 nodes in order to make each one of these. That's nothing. That's one trip every time that you want to make one of these. And again, the great thing about these is you're building as you go. You're not set to any building plan or anything like that, and you're not really exposed, right? You have your loot all protected, and you can just build at your leisure, wherever you are. Because this is one thing: if you get too familiar with one build, if you're building in a certain area that doesn't really benefit from that area, you're kind of screwed because you can't adapt. And I think that this external TC is perfect for adaptation.